Welcome to this episode of Horrific History and Hauntings. I'm Beth.
And I'm Ramy. We're your hosts, here to talk about the stories that the history books ignore.
From horrific epidemics and ghostly hauntings to the catastrophes and tragic events that have sickened humanity.
Beth, What are we talking about today?
Cults. The Children of God cult in particular.
Oh, cults.
Yes.
They're a fascinating thing.
Yeah.
If they get real big, they just become a religion.
See, I was just going to do an episode on basic cult things, but then I happened to come up on a documentary, which I forgot the name of it. It was on YouTube.
That's very vague.
Well, in this cult documentary, they happened to mention the Children of God, and I decided to look into it and realized that there was a lot more to it than what I figured it was going to be. And then I spent 2 days straight, stayed up late and everything because I was so interested in how horrible these people still are.
I'm pretty sure I've seen documentaries on like Discovery Plus or somewhere about these people too.
Yeah. And I'm going to do a brief, short, This Day in History. It's still April 10th. We're doing 2 episodes today.
Otherwise known as the day Fallout TV series is released.
Yes, he's excited about that.
Yes.
In 1963, the atomic submarine USS Thresher sank in the Atlantic Ocean,
Fallout.
killing all on board.
That sounds very Fallout too.
Yeah. It was about 300 miles off the coast of New England, and just before 8 a.m., they were conducting drills off of the coast of Cape Cod, and at 9:13 a.m., the USS Skylark, another ship participating in the drills, received a communication from the Thresher that it was experiencing minor problems.
You know, Chernobyl happened because of drills.
Yeah, but if you don't do the drills, then you're going to be shit out of luck in the real.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, by all
thing.
means, do the drills. That's what they do them for. But
Yeah.
It just so happened something to go
Wasn't
wrong.
that what was it, Flight 19? All those.
Like 119?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or no, the Bermuda Triangle, they sent a bunch of planes out. Weren't those drills? And they never came back?
Oh, yeah, that happens all the time, though.
Yeah.
That's just a Bermuda Triangle thing. Probably Jormungandr or something ate them. I don't know.
Yeah. Other attempted communications failed, and about 5 minutes later, sonar images showed the Thresher breaking apart as it fell to the bottom of the sea. That must have been terrifying, because there's nothing you could do about it.
I don't know if it's terrifying, considering how fast it must have happened. I always heard it
No,
was...
I mean the people watching it.
Oh, yeah.
16 officers, 96 sailors, and 17 civilians were on board, and all perished.
Civilians?
Yeah, I don't know why they had civilians there.
I guess it was a routine check, and they had civilians for some reason. Maybe something needed worked on that wasn't possible to be worked on. I don't know.
Yeah. On April 12th, President John F. Kennedy had flags across the country be flown at half staff to commemorate the lives lost in this disaster.
That seems to happen a lot lately.
Yeah.
I can't remember last time I seen...
I don't even know because, as I'm sure I've mentioned before, I haven't really been watching the news, so I have no idea. I'm like, that flag, all these flags are only halfway up. I wonder what went on.
Yeah, I always just assume it's some sort of terrible school shooting or something now.
Yeah.
I follow the news.
Did you see what they're doing to Abingdon High?
Oh, yeah. They're really bulletproofing it.
And they have like key codes on all the doors.
Yeah.
Which I just happened to notice because I like driving past the front of it rather than going the
Main Street
way. Yeah.
That's how I do too. Yeah, it's a big effect that these things are having.
Yeah.
We kind of just forgot about the nuclear sub.
An investigation revealed that the leak in a silver brazed joint in the engine room had caused a short circuit in critical electrical systems, which these problems spread quickly, making the equipment needed to bring the Thresher to the surface
Not operate.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah. But the disaster, like many others, forced improvements in the design of the submarines and the quality control. And 25 years in 1988, Vice Admiral Bruce DeMars, the Navy's chief submarine officer, said the loss of the Thresher initiated fundamental changes in the way we do business. Changes in design, construction, inspections, safety checks, tests, and more. We have not forgotten the lessons learned. It's a much safer submarine force today. If you're not going to the Titanic on Ocean Gate, they completely ignore those safety regulations.
Well, the Russians lost a few subs too. They had one go down, and they used Howard Hughes to try and recover it so he could study their stuff. I say Russians. The USSR. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republic.
What is a cult?
I can't answer this without seeming bad, so go on.
Oh. A cult is a community defined by a powerful leader, strict beliefs, and extensive control or influence over its members' lives. It often involves harmful or extreme practices.
Yep, I know some cult people.
Cults have been present throughout history, spanning from ancient times to the modern era. The most known examples include the Manson family, Charles Manson, and Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, Heaven's Gate was another one I can remember well.
Yeah. And I didn't go much into it, but whenever I do another cult, I'm going to go into the more ancient history of cults.
Every religion was pretty much... Christianity was a cult for a while.
Yes, for a while. They use various psychological tactics to manipulate their members, such as brainwashing, isolation, and by causing fear. They typically attract vulnerable individuals that are searching for life meaning or facing personal struggles in their lives, but it can also be people that are just really nice and really want to help others. They apparently tend to get those as well.
The kind folk.
Yeah.
They're out there slashing up some movie star.
While cults are often viewed as threats to society, they can offer a sense of community and belonging to their members. And leaving a cult is usually extremely challenging, and former members often suffer from lasting psychological impacts.
I could see how that happens.
Yeah. There are a few survivors of the Children of God and other reports. Some of these aren't actually survivors. They are no longer living, but it's still their stories.
They survived the initial incident.
Yeah. The Children of God believe that all Christians should give up their personal belongings and their loved ones to fully devote themselves to Christ.
The only person you can give it to, though, is the leader of your religion.
Yeah.
What if you gave it to somebody else?
This survivor in particular, I'm not going to say the name, even though they probably used the right name in the documentary I was watching, but I just didn't feel comfortable saying this one's name in particular. Her parents became members of the cult when they were teenagers, around 17 years old in France. They got married within the cult and started having kids, and they moved to Thailand. This is where she was born, the survivor. She mentioned that there were around 10,000 members at any given time, with roughly 60% of them being children. And this was because they didn't support the use of birth control of any kind, because they got to make new members for their cult. For the majority of her childhood, she lived in a large combo home, or multiple large combo homes, because I think they get moved around sometimes.
Yeah.
And they were ran much like a military camp, she said. They slept and ate together. They were divided by age groups and had strict schedules. And she said that they were pretty much raising them to be members of God's final army. She used the phrase, quote, trained mentally and physically to be soldiers.
Sounds culty.
Yeah. They were told they would die and receive extraordinary gifts, such as superpowers, for their sacrifice. If they're dead, I don't see how they're going to achieve that. But okay.
Maybe they meant in heaven.
Yeah.
Or whatever this cult believed in.
Yeah. They raised the children with the belief that they would likely die during their teenage years, and they also tried predicting the end of the world a few times.
A few times?
Yeah.
One of those strange, miraculous things that happen in cults where they believe, after the first time, we made a whoopsie. They keep believing it time and time again.
Some of them were not even allowed to see their parents or their siblings very much. She said that it didn't matter what relationship anyone was in, everyone was encouraged to sleep with everyone else in the commune. It got to the point where they began having sex-sharing schedules. They were told when, who, and how. David Berg eventually introduced the law of love, which were letters about child sex pretty much most of the time.
Didn't he have a bunch of recordings?
Yes,
just
and they're actually very easy to find.
Yeah.
They have these laws of love and the victims, the family, so much information that was easily found with this one. I liked that. There's some that on this site that say the family hasn't shown all of them, which makes me wonder if what we've seen or what we can easily find is this bad. What are the ones that they're hiding?
Mm-hmm.
He tried to convince them that it was acceptable for children to experiment sexually and be sexually active as soon as they hit puberty.
I mean, he must have convinced them if they'd done it.
Yes. You can actually listen to his little speech thing on I think it's called the X Family website. It's either the Family website or the X Family website. I'm not sure which one, but you can listen to some of these things. And he pretty much stated that if God didn't want children to be sexual, why did he make them able to produce children so young? Pretty much their periods, used period as an excuse. And why did he make them so desirable
Oh, no.
Yeah. I
Self-proclaimed
think
pedophile.
yes, I think, and you're out here openly admitting it, and these people are just following it.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine and dandy. Like, we get these letters were like newsletters that he would send out.
Now, we can't blame the ones who are born into it, but the ones who fell for it,
Yeah.
this seems a little bit easier to blame.
This one is tough because there is a whole brainwashing thing, and I get that. But once you heard that,
I mean, if you're the kids who are born into it, how would you know any difference?
Yeah, if you're the kids born into it, that's pretty much what you were raised to believe. And even some of them managed to get out of that and realize that it was not an appropriate situation, which eventually I'll get into.
This happens a lot in cults. This was just an extreme case of it.
Yeah. At age 4, a man who lived in this particular survivor's home and was supposed to look after them used this as the okay to sexually abuse her multiple times. Eventually, this person was excommunicated when another child complained about it.
Now, explain again what you just said, because you said at age 4.
Yes, age 4. He was doing it at age 4. I'm assuming that this girl clearly had not started puberty.
Obviously.
And maybe that's why he was excommunicated, or perhaps law got involved and they were afraid. I really don't know.
That's insane.
Yeah. David introduced flirty fishing, which was that women in particular should use their bodies to get people to Christ. Pretty much, I think they called it winning a soul for Christ.
This seems like you're going to end up in the other spot.
It was religious prostitution.
Yeah, this seems more like a hell thing. A succubus, perhaps.
And pretty much.
He turned you into succubi.
Yeah. And if you denied it or said no to it, then you were considered selfish.
Just calling me selfish.
Yeah, I'll be selfish. You damn skippy. It's my body. I'm going to be selfish. He would also have them try to go after wealthy, well-to-do, rich people to get donations for the cult.
I'm running out of 8 tracks
pretty much
to
trying
record
financially.
On, so we needed some more income.
Yeah. They were being sold to get money for the cult. And not even just money, like followers as well. Upon departing the cult, she had to part ways with her younger siblings that she had pretty much helped raise, and she was uncertain for their safety, but she said that she knew she had to get out. And then she had trouble figuring out what her personality was or what thoughts and traits the cult had forced on her throughout her childhood and which ones were actually hers. She didn't know who she was or anything.
Nature versus nurture.
One 14-year-old runaway reported she stayed at a Children of God commune for 9 days. She was raped and forced into solitary confinement on at least 3 different occasions because she didn't cooperate with the elders. Another former member of the Children of God said in The Guardian that the law of love teaching was meant to justify and conceal sexual exploitation. And that was a quote.
That's exactly what it was.
Yes. Another quote that they said is, it's made to make other people feel obligated to give up their bodies to others' so-called sexual needs, that your body is not your own. You're supposed to give it up to God.
Did this happen to the men as well?
Everybody was fucking everybody. And when I say everybody was fucking everybody, I mean it didn't matter if they were related or not. This schedule, you get told who, you go fuck them.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I don't like to call people crazy too much, but this is crazy.
I don't know if I'm saying his last name right. It's either Berg or Berg. B-E-R-G. Sarah Berg, who is the former daughter-in-law of David Berg, she was Paul Aaron's first wife after being forced by David and her mother to marry him. She was only 15 years old. She told her statement to the New York attorney. She reported that she was forced to have intercourse with Paul in the presence of David, and after she gave birth to her first child, David tried to get her to have sex with him by saying things such as, "I see you with Paul's son. Why can't you have my son? Probably because you're my father-in-law, you sick fuck. And I'm also," well, I don't know if she was 15 at the time, but I'm sure she was probably very young still.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 weeks before the birth of her second child, David ruled that someone should demonstrate how to have sex with a pregnant woman to the other followers. Paul, her husband, volunteered, but Sarah refused, which caused Paul to beat her in the stomach with a 2x4.
That sounds like a reasonable response to being told,
"No, I will not have sex in front of everyone in this cult, commune, whatever you want to call it, this family. No, thank you."
People just...
Gross.
Gross, yeah.
She received medical treatment from a doctor that was outside of the family. A system doctor, I believe is what they call them. And she was punished for this by having her son taken from her while she and her new baby were held prisoner in a trailer. Because she got medical treatment after her after her husband, who is the son of the leader, beat her in the stomach with a 2x4.
These are harder to do now because most of the time they would report it immediately.
She managed to sneak her and her newborn daughter out and walked 6 miles to escape the children of God. She returned later with others to get her son, who was an infant at this time, but Paul refused to give her the child. In 1973, Sarah received a final decree of divorce. This was after, I believe it was before, but after Paul Aaron jumped off a cliff to take his own life, and Sarah wrote the attorneys for the children of God to ask them for help to find her missing son. They claimed they did not know where her son was. It's believed, not known, but it's believed that he may be with a member of the Children of God in British Columbia. But as far as I could find, nobody's found him yet. Oh. So I'm wondering, is he really though, or did you just kill this poor kid off?
Yeah. Could change his name and send him. With these people, it's hard to tell. He might believe he's somebody else.
Yeah. Mary Jolene Berg was David's granddaughter. She was Paul Aaron's and Judy Arlene Helmstettlers. Helmstettlers. Helmstettlers? I don't know. Judy Arlene. There we go. At age 11, in December 1983, she was invited to her grandfather's compound, where she stayed until August 1987. While at the compound with him, she was the victim of severe physical, sexual, and psychological abuse.
Welcome to the compound.
Yeah, welcome to the family. Family publications mention Mary being forced to perform striptease dancing with other women and teen girls, which were recorded for David.
Oh, goody. Put those Betamaxes to good use, didn't he?
Yes, and like I said, those family publications, a lot of them can actually be found on this website. That's why it was so easy. It's one of the first websites that pops up. In a 2005 interview with Rolling Stone magazine, Mary's brother, Don Irwin, mentioned that her first sexual experience was when she was 12 years old and with Ricky. David wanted Ricky to get Mary pregnant, and I'll explain who Ricky is later.
Okay.
To ensure that his family line would continue through his granddaughter. She was tied to a bed and beaten while being told Satan possessed her, and they tried to play off this abuse on her as a form of exorcism. Pretty much sending out newsletters to this whole family, as they want to call it, saying she's possessed, she's the devil because she was out in the real world and then we invited her here to beat the crap out of her and sexually abuse her.
She's possessed because she has common sense. At least she did.
About a year later, she was sent to a family detention camp where she was locked in her room for 6 months and suffered mental breakdowns. When Mary started speaking out about the abuse she had endured while in the care of the family, Karen Zerby, which I'll explain who she is later too, Sarah Kelly and others wrote in the family newsletter thing that they had, saying things such as, quote, I believe the bottom line for everyone who hears means, which is what they called her, it was Mary's, atrocity tells, is that they have to make a choice. And for people in the family, that choice would be so easy, because why would anyone in the family accept the word of this crazy girl who completely yielded herself to the devil over Dad's account of what happened? Of course, the reason there's a strong temptation to believe means tell is because she's really got her story down pat. She goes into all kinds of vivid details with every person and what they supposedly did.
Anybody in the family might believe. Anybody in the outside world, they can see you for what you are.
They see right through it.
Yeah.
Yes. It goes on, quote, she was fucking the devil and throwing horrible violent curses on everyone around her, describing these in vivid gruesome detail.
Look who's talking.
You fucking psychopaths.
You all are kooks.
Yeah.
I'm sure you didn't used to be kooks.
Yeah.
But you became kooks.
Yeah. This was also starting during the whole hippie love everybody thing, and he kind of used that
People
to his advantage.
People forget there was a dark side of that.
Yeah. He used that to his advantage to get people to do things like this and believe things like this. Sadly, Mary was one of those that had trouble after this whole thing, and she ended up getting hooked on meth and was homeless for a while. She ended up dying in her sleep due to respiratory failure on December 16th, 2017.
That's a pity.
Yeah. Deborah Berg was one of David's daughters. She wrote the inside story by the daughter of the founder, Moses David Berg, because he liked to call himself Moses, dad, grandfather, crap like that.
Yeah.
But his own daughter wrote that. And she did so with, I'm assuming it is her husband. because it says Bill Davis and hers is Deborah Lindeberg Davis. So I'm going to assume it's her husband. I really don't know.
I've gotten the whole family tree mixed up.
She wrote about a time that her father came to her bedside when she was in her 20s and married at the time. Her husband had been sent elsewhere away from her during this time because they were not getting along at all. In this little writing, I think it's a book, but you can also find parts of it on the internet very easily. They weren't getting along. She was having an affair with someone. She believed that her father, David, is part of the reason that her relationships just was not working with her husband. He pretty much enjoyed watching it go downhill.
Oh,
yeah.
Was he jealous?
Probably. He's gross. Before showing up at her bedside, her father, David, told her she was to be pretty much promoted to the queen, which was a blessing by God. Or so he said.
Marry me, daughter.
After a few days after the coronation, he showed up in her bedroom and said, Deborah, wake up, honey. Honey, the Lord has given us a great deal of freedom in Christ. We mustn't look upon it lightly. God's love is all-encompassing, and to the pure, all things are pure.
Encompassing.
I don't know what that means.
It covers all.
Okay. I'm sorry. It's just really hard for me to understand what this nutcase is saying. God has made me king over his new nation, and now he has made you the queen.
Guess what that means?
God wants from each of us total loyalty and submission. As queen, you must prove your loyalty to God and the king. God has given us all things freely in Christ Jesus, and his only law is love.
Join my sex cult, honey.
She then mentioned that she recalled him trying this kind of thing in the past when she was only like 7 years old. She rejected him, and he left her alone in the room, surprisingly. He then gathered the royal family for a meeting afterwards. Pretty much the decision, I wouldn't really say decision makers, like his actual family, I want to say the upper
echelon
people in this cult. Here is some of what Deborah wrote that her father said during this meeting. Quote, sex is one of God's greatest gifts to man, and we are free under grace to enjoy the liberties of sexual freedom. To the pure, all things are pure. But there are some here who are and have been resisting the Spirit of God, and God won't have it.
How demanding. He's Old Testament.
In the Bible, God makes many exceptions to his rules. How do you think Adam and Eve propagated the human race? Who do you think Cain took as his wife? He took one of his sisters, of course. That doesn't mean we need to do that now. Even if that is true.
Imagine his sister saying that. Now, hold on a minute.
Yeah. That doesn't mean we need to do that now. You have a whole
planet full of people with a cult that will do anything you want. And here you want the lady next door that you gave birth to.
Yeah. And then it goes on. And what about Lot and his daughters? Is that how you say that? L-O-T?
Yeah.
It's a Bible thing. I don't know. It says that Lot had an intercourse with his daughters, and God made a great nation out of them, with multiple toes, probably.
He's just chastising her.
Horrible immune systems.
In public.
If we take a closer look at Scripture, I think you need to stop that.
Yeah, this seems to
have... we find that in some special situations, God breaks his own rules.
Is he claiming to be a prophet?
Is that pretty much like the messenger of God?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only you can hear God's voice.
Yeah, he's one of those that didn't say, I am God. He's the messenger of God.
It's just as equally powerful.
I don't want to hear from God if that's what he's got to say. Where's the block button?
Cult speeches always make me terribly uncomfortable, which is what they do to most normal-minded people that haven't been initiated, I guess.
Could you imagine being at a meeting and this psychopath doing this to his own damn daughter in public? Telling people in public, admitting it. Just
everybody imagines no shame. They won't be part of a cult. I can't keep a straight face long enough for them to take me seriously if they try to initiate. I'd either be murdered or something.
Laughing inappropriate times because you're fucking crazy.
The normal world is laughable half the time to me. This...
You just gotta walk away.
This
turn around and walk away.
Out there. Surely some sort of drug helped them open their minds to this at first. There's no way a level-headed person would go into this. I say that, but I know it happens.
Find anything. I I don't believe I found anything that said anything about drugs or alcohol in this one.
You said the hippie era, and
But
I just
yes,
assumed.
it was the hippie era, so there's a possibility.
I don't know. It's easy to. I don't mean to sound like I'm victim blaming. I'm just. Everybody says they wouldn't be in a cult, and then people, which you would assume
Would never be in a cult.
common sense ends up in a cult. So
yeah.
I probably no different. I couldn't take it seriously when I first heard it to the point where I would be insulting. And
I would be so confused. Like I said, I had trouble trying to understand that.
They
I just walk away. I don't know what you're talking about, dude.
They bamboozle you into following them eventually.
Deborah then wrote about how he turned this all on her because she rejected his sexual advances towards her, that she was considered no longer worthy of being called queen because of this. Now listen to this. Instead, her little sister, Faithy, was promoted to the queen because she had never rejected her father. Then it was revealed that from an early childhood, David had pretty much been sexually abusing Faithy. I think she had written that they were having an incest relationship, but if she was willingly doing this, then it was probably because she was raised to think that's what she's supposed to do.
Yeah.
In which case, still sexual abuse because she's a child.
When you are...
And, your daughter.
When you're named Faithy, you pretty much know you're in a cult.
Yeah. They also had different names. Like they were born with a name, but then they got their names changed or they would call them a different name.
Do you mean my Christian name or my
birth
cult name? There's a difference.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes.
Yeah. Deborah managed to sneak out at about 4 a.m, not long after her demotion from queen.
I would have put on my red heart-shaped hat and started screaming off of his head. They want a queen. I'll show them a crazy queen. That woman made more sense than this guy. I'd have followed the Red Queen any day over this.
So she escaped the cult. She actually, I want to say, lived in a motel for months. And then about 4 months later is when her brother Aaron's body would be found at the bottom of a cliff. I want to say in Switzerland, but I'm not sure. I know it was at the bottom.
Why did that happen? Did she disappoint them so much he couldn't take it, or did they just push him off of it?
I'm not quite sure. I think it was he just happened to maybe realize he was a piece of shit for beating his pregnant wife with a 2x4 because she didn't want to have sex publicly.
He might have also just realized that he was going to get in trouble.
He was doing. Well, that's a possibility too, yeah.
That's the thing. Because once you get out and they get their head straight, they're going to start talking.
Yeah.
And then you can't stay behind the cult walls and stay safe forever.
Yeah.
Because, well, unfortunately, we've seen how that turns out in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Tanks busted the door and burned the place down. Well, they didn't burn the place down. The cultists did, I do believe. But this is a whole different cult, though.
Yeah. That was a few of the survivor stories. Now we're going to go more into the children of God. Prepare yourself. It gets worse. They say they are Reformed Christians, a Reformed Christian church now. I don't know if that's true because Karen, the woman I mentioned before, who was the new wife of David, is still in charge of it. Nobody knows her location, but she's still in charge of it. It's mostly an online thing now. And they changed their name to The Family, I believe, is what it is now. It's either The Family or The Family International.
The Family. I've heard that somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. David was born February 18th, 1919. He lived in Florida in his early years, but was born in California. He was the youngest of 3 kids. His parents were a little cuckoo themselves, not so great people. His mother was named Virginia, and his father was Hilmer Berg. Virginia became religious when she broke her back after being thrown off a horse and was paralyzed, and then eventually was able to walk.
Okay, I can see that, especially in 1919.
She hosted a radio show and was traveling, pretty much being a traveling preacher, talking about miracles and how they happen.
I could see how she done that too.
Years later, one of her daughters called her mother out. The time she claimed to be paralyzed for 5 years, she was actually at the Texas Christian University and was perfectly fine.
Learning how to be a cult leader.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
no.
exactly right.
You bamboozled me, woman.
Yes. She also was not a great, I think this was after she joined another church, which I'll get into later. She threatened to cut off David's genitals when she caught him touching himself one time and in front of the whole family in a bowl that she put under his genitals. And if she would have probably kept that promise, it probably wouldn't have ended up with a cult in the future. But she didn't. The second time she caught him, she forced her husband, his father Hilmer, to walk in and forced him to finish himself in front of them both.
He's a disgusting bunch of people.
Yeah. So this was pretty much trained into his head to begin with.
Now, the age, was it 19 through 19, when? This age would have been, I'm pretty sure, during the whole weird, like, chastity belt style, this is what's making everybody sick phase.
1919, I believe is when it was, is when he was born.
Yeah, so everything in the media and medically is telling them right now this is terrible for him to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's because they're Christians or because they're listening to the medical science at the time, which could not be considered science, really.
No. Well, Hilmer, his father, was a Swedish immigrant, and I couldn't really find much about him, but from what I understand, he was kind of like a traveling musician, one of those you stand on the street and you play music.
A troubadour.
Yeah, kind of like
From
that.
Switzerland.
That's what I was getting out of it anyway, but like I said, I couldn't find much about him.
He's probably regretting his life choices.
He didn't really have much to do with any of it. I feel like he wasn't much of a parent because he wasn't parenting. He wasn't clearly beating the hell out of his wife for forcing their son to do things like that. I'm sorry. Most of the time I'd say don't beat women, but in this case, she needed to be locked up. Sometimes I can't hold my temper when it comes to people like that.
It's a nightmare scenario to be in.
Yeah. After David was born, they joined the Pentecostal church and became really, really involved in it. He eventually got married to his first wife, Jane Miller, and had 2 kids. And this after he became a minister. He served as a minister in a church located in Arizona for a while. And then he got accused of inappropriate sexual acts and ran away from town.
That's very vague, though.
Yeah, it didn't really say what it was. Then he began to work under a faith healer, which also didn't work out, but don't know why. And then he was working with the founder of the American Soul Clinic, which is a missionary training school, for 15 years.
Good Lord.
Yeah, he worked there for 15 years, but eventually that also failed. He's a failure. He moved him and his family to California, where his mother lived, soon after the bitch died. Now, I don't see much about Jane. I'm assuming she did accept this lifestyle of his, but I didn't see much where she was very much involved. He tried to create a band with his family at 50 years old, because everything else he tried to do in life failed. They would sing on beaches in an attempt to make extra money and to make ends meet. This eventually was also used to bring in followers when he finally, I guess, made the decision to create a cult. I don't know how that would have went. He told them he was a messenger of God and tried boosting their confidence to make them feel safe until they would eventually bow down to his commands.
He's like a bad psychiatrist.
Yeah. In 1969, David made a prophecy that all of California was going to be destroyed by an earthquake.
He didn't make that. Geologists did.
He took 50 of his members and left California and went to Arizona.
Only 50. The rest of you are going to drown.
He left a few behind just in case the earthquake didn't happen.
You are selected.
Pretty much.
You didn't have enough money to donate.
This was not over an earthquake. He was making the cult a worldwide thing by leaving these people behind. And then they moved multiple times, but he would leave some behind. So this was becoming a worldwide thing. That's why.
Maybe he only picked the very devoted to stay behind so that they would remain devoted. Because without the leader around, they'd have to be devoted not to fall back into normalcy, I'd imagine.
I think they also had probably not the main leaders, but in each particular commune, a particular leader, elder type person. While in Arizona, he formed 12 groups. He would get attractive women to go out and fish for new followers. That's the flirty fishing that was mentioned in the survivor's story.
Almost catfishing.
Yes. His wife, Jane, was actually one of the women who would go out to do this. Later on, she brought in a woman this way named Karen Zerby. She eventually took Jane's place as David's wife. He was still, as far as I know, always married to Jane, but pretty much had multiple wives, and Karen happened to be one of them. He called Jane at some point the old wife, the old wine wife, or something like that. I forgot exactly what it was. Anyway, he pretty much was calling her old and sent her off and kept Karen.
Wow.
Yeah.
If he called her old wine's better than new wine.
Oh.
She aged well.
Well, he didn't care apparently because he sent her off to another commune far away. Before assuming Jane's role as his wife, David persuaded both Jane and Karen into polygamy.
Well, he had to have done something, yeah.
Because, he's the messenger of God and God said that's how it's supposed to be or some shit like that. Then again, he packed up his now 2 women and children and his now hundreds of followers, and they traveled to Quebec.
I would have pointed out to him that Jesus had no wives. So I will be taking that as an example. Thank you.
It was during this time that David began identifying himself as Moses, later shortened to Mo.
I wish y'all could see how my eyes are rolling. I have a bad habit of doing that when I hear something preposterous. It's one of my favorite emojis, actually.
Yeah.
I use it very often because it's the best way to handle something like this.
I kind of like the side-eye emoji for this one. He convinced his followers that following him was the only way to survive Armageddon.
Well, it's only California. Move to Virginia. Just ignore it. Just go away.
He would preach to them about how there were only 144,000 spots in heaven.
Oh, no.
And that the only way they were guaranteed a spot was to be a part of the cult. But what happens if the cult gains more followers than the available spots in heaven, you may ask?
You best be showing me who could fish the most.
He told them that if the memberships exceeded that number at any time, they could pray an innocent person out of heaven and take their place.
No!
So you're just praying, this person might have been good, but Lord, I need me a spot in heaven. You better kick those motherfuckers to the curb.
Oh, no.
Oh.
What made him think that up?
I don't know.
Of course, they'll all be vying to be his top numbers so they can kick people out and have their spots. Everybody wants a spot, so everybody's going to try to be nicer to him than the other persons. Because if he's God's favorite, then he's certainly going to have some input. Oh, my goodness. It's the only time I'd like to see this guy come across a nice little Christian community with their fire and brimstone ways. Between the sex cult and the fire and brimstone Baptists. It would be a sight to see.
Oh, okay.
Because I've met those kinds of Christians, the fire and brimstone Baptists, and they'd be a potluck to talk about. Oh.
Members were required to sign a document known as the Revolutionary Contract, and by doing this, they were agreeing to give up all their belongings, property, and money to the cult.
I have you John Hancock here.
Yeah, pretty much everything they had.
You know there's a guy in Fallout 4 trying to do this to you? He has a whole community of people, and he says, just sign here, and then he takes you in the back to talk more about it. He gets back there, and he's like, listen, if you think I'm going to hand over everything I own to you in this apocalyptic wasteland, then you're crazy. And he says, you could do it this way, or I could say you attack me and they come in and take it from your corpse. I just blow them all up. I don't care. I blow them all up. I feel bad for people born into it who don't know better. And I feel bad for the people who, over time, were brainwashed. It's laughable because we're not in it. Okay? That's how I see it. So let's not take our giggles too seriously, but I don't know what to say about it. I'm fascinated by cults because I find them so out there.
1970. David and 200 of his members moved to Texas. They ended up at the Texas Soul Clinic, where new members would receive new names given to them. He divided the members up again into 12 groups, which were assigned work assignments, pretty much normal living things for a community. But these workers didn't get to keep the good stuff. The good stuff got sent to David and his family.
A feudal system.
He constantly played Bible verses over speakers, and members had to remember them all as well.
You're out of luck there. I'm not good at that.
They were also assigned buddies and were not allowed to be alone, even sometimes going to the bathroom, some of these people said.
Don't let them run away.
Yeah. This obviously left little time for thinking for yourself, which may also help to understand why people
didn't leave.
Yeah.
We can't have no free thinkers.
Yeah. There was, as I mentioned before, a lot of sexual abuse going on in this family at the time. It was his way of practicing how to get his followers into polygamy lifestyle, considering at this time he was preaching purity and no sex before marriage to his followers. But in his own home, he was forcing his own family to pretty much have orgies with each other. And then, like I said, practicing to try to get his followers into it. There was also something that said he would go to his sons when they got married and pretty much ask them if he could sleep with their wife. And if they said no, that one got demoted, had to struggle, I guess. While if the other one said yes and let him sleep with his wife, he would get promoted.
Not just that, they send him to other places, like other countries too. The ones stuck in other countries that they don't even speak the language in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good way to getting them like stuck together with that group, and they can't. If they get out, then what's going to happen to them?
Yeah.
They're stuck in another land.
Yeah. One of the survivors, I want to say, ended up leaving Ukraine.
They were a big party in England too, weren't they?
Yeah. I want to say one of them ended up leaving Ukraine and being pretty much all alone because she had to find her way back to America. I think it was a she. It might have been a he. I don't remember. But one of the survivors, anyway. Must have been terrifying. During this time, he also sent Jane, his wife, to live in another commune while, as I mentioned before, keeping Karen, his new wife, with him. In 1972, he had the followers believing that the letters he sent them were messages from God. And by that time, the Children of God had become international, with 130 communities established worldwide. Eventually,
it's scary to think that this caught on to such an extent.
It really is. Eventually, that is the only way he would communicate with his followers, by sending out these newsletters, these psychotic, and eventually he started drawing things like
his own Karma Sutra
comic book or those little comic things in newspapers.
Comic section, isn't it?
I don't know.
I think it's what it's called.
Yeah. The only time the lower followers saw his face was if he wanted to have sex with that particular member.
Oh dear.
But in these letters, he began promoting polygamy, public masturbation, orgies, wife swapping. As mentioned in the survivor's story, eventually this was child sex, saying it was okay for children to be involved in sexual acts, even with adults.
Did this all come from him being like abused as a child himself? That's what I'm wondering. It seems like it'd be the case, considering
think that's definitely part of it, but still.
He knew better.
Yeah. Clearly, he knew better. He preached to his followers that God wanted children to have sex because why else would God give their girls periods at such a young age? But he also preached against homosexuality if it was a man-on-man thing. Apparently, it was fine in his beliefs for women to be lesbians,
That seems to have caught on in the Greater Society of America anyway. Yeah. That's one of the few teachings he had that caught on. He's a hypocrite. Yeah.
One letter he sent out was informing women that they were glorifying God if they made videos of themselves dancing nude for him. And this,
just for him.
Yes, this eventually began including teenagers and children.
That is illegal.
Yep.
For a good reason.
Yep. By 1973, Paul Aaron, one of David's sons, took his own life by jumping off the cliff, as I mentioned before. 1974, David come up with the Reorganization Revolution. This was an attempt to remove those members who objected to his preachings and practices, because some of them did start to realize, like, hey, maybe your newsletter saying it's okay to fuck a child is not appropriate and not okay. So some of them, I'm assuming, did speak up and was not okay with this, and he was trying to purge them. This was also after the Jim Jones suicides, so I'm assuming he was afraid that the Children of God cult he had created would be put to an end. So he changed the name to Family of Love. Too much love.
Yep.
Karen admitted to sleeping with a bunch of guys and ended up pregnant with her son. David believed Karen was a prophet and that her child, which was not his biological child, was also a prophet. And this child was called Ricky. You remember me mentioning Ricky before?
Yes.
They documented nearly all of his life in a book.
Because he's a prophet.
All of it. He was raised by two of the flirty Fishers, pretty much like they're his nannies, I guess. Sarah Kelly and Angela Smith. Sarah Kelly practiced sexual acts on Ricky when he was only about 20 months old. The Rolling Stone magazine goes into way more detail that is extremely disturbing about the book that was published about Ricky's life. It just contained more details. The story of Davidito, Davidito, is what this is called. The book.
DeVito?
Maybe.
Davido?
I don't know. I think that was maybe one of his other names. Yeah. I'm not sure, though.
They can call it their religious name or whatever. Yeah. Their family name. I'm going to call it a cult name.
Yeah. Good old Sarah Kelly, the good, outstanding, wonderful person she was, also offered up her 7-year-old daughter to David for any sexual acts he wanted.
I suspect there's a certain layer in the inferno for people like her. The Divine Comedy. I cannot remember what layer it was where people like Cleopatra and all of them went. Who I think probably didn't deserve to go nearly as much as some of these people.
At age 12, Ricky was forced to have a girlfriend who was in her 30s. This is why people with Karens have a bad rep.
The OG Karen. The Giga Karen.
Yes. In the Rolling Stone magazine article, it said that Davida Kelly, which was the daughter of Sarah Kelly, was on the bed next to them at the time Ricky was forced to engage in sexual acts with Karen. She was 11 years old at the time and was having sexual contact with David during this time as well.
How do they not all end up in prison?
I don't know. There was also, I fell asleep during this particular documentary. It was a good documentary, but like I said, I'd been staying up late for 2 days.
Yeah.
Diving into this, so I ended up falling asleep. But I want to say that it said that there was also people of power and like senators and politicians that have power and rich people that have power that was also involved in this.
I could see that.
In 1986, David banned sex between adults and minors. I think he was afraid that he was going to get caught, which means he knew it was wrong.
Yeah.
The next year, he stopped the flirty fishing due to the AIDS crisis.
At least he had a little common sense in him.
Well, he was fucking everybody there, so I'm assuming he didn't want to catch it.
Oh, that's right. He was just afraid for himself. Never mind.
Yeah.
I figured he was actually trying to do something good for a change.
No. I don't think this dude ever did anything good. Come 1991, he ordered that the copies of the book DeVito, I'm guessing is how it's pronounced, be destroyed. This is, like I said, probably due to don't want too much evidence.
Yeah, information's getting out too much.
Yeah. Karen began writing the letters when David could no longer do so because he was sick and old. She wrote in one that when someone was masturbating or having intercourse, they were to imagine Jesus having sex with them. She even gave them quotes, things such as, I forgot what they were exactly. You can, like I said, find them easily. Things like, I don't know, I don't want to say that about Jesus. I'm not particularly Christian, but it's just very inappropriate talking dirty to Jesus.
I'm sure you could find it if you looked it up.
Remember that episode with Cartman and the religious music? And he just changed the words to Jesus, and it became very inappropriate. It's pretty much, it reminded me of that.
Yeah, he took love songs and just changed the names to Christian, like Jesus.
Yeah.
In South Park, and it became a hit. Of course, a lot of it came across as him just sounding like he was romancing Jesus. I could see how that would turn into what this is being. Yeah. It might be where I got the idea.
And there's even videos of this in that documentary. I'll try to find it and send you that
Discovery
link.
Plus, I'm pretty sure, has a documentary called Cults. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's Netflix. There's a whole series of episodes called Cults, and I've watched one about this one.
Yeah. 1993, David faced allegations of sexual abuse. I wonder why.
Caught on, did they? How many years later?
Against his daughters and granddaughters. The little bitch fled to Portugal when Interpol initiated and investigations began into the cult leader in Argentina. He passed away in the European country in October 1994, yet the cult continued to grow because Karen Zergby remarried, and she, along with her new husband, who clearly was a giant sack of shit as well if he was marrying into this nonsense and knew about it, Steve Kell, assumed control and kept it going. In 1974, the New York Attorney General's office estimated that followers of the Children of God lived in 120 communes, and by 2006, there were reportedly at least 1,400 communes spread across over 100 countries.
My God, they're growing.
After being renamed the Family International, the group eventually ended in 2010. However, it reformed into a small online network, which now I think it consists of about 1,500 members in 80 countries.
Yeah, I mean, that's plenty of subscribers to keep your coffers full for one or two people.
Ricky Rodriguez eventually exposed his mother, Karen, according to the Rolling Stone article. On January 7th, 2005, Ricky, age 29, stabbed his former nanny, Angela Smith, to death. I don't know why it was Angela Smith and not Sarah. Maybe he just couldn't get a hold of Sarah at the time. I don't know.
Just an opportunity.
Yeah. Afterward, he took his own life with a .40 caliber handgun. Just hours before taking his own life, Ricky made a videotape, and in it, he said things such as, quote, "I just want it to end. I just want it to be over. How can you do that to kids and sleep at night?" He was doing this while showing the knife he later used to kill Angela. And he said, quote, "I only want it for one reason, to take out the scum. Taking out the fucking trash."
He was angsty and angry for a good reason.
For a good reason, yeah. He also hoped to get far enough to kill his own mother, Karen. And he mentioned that Davida, Sarah's daughter, had escaped the cult as well, and he was able to get in contact with her. He said that she told him she had nightmares of getting dragged out of bed and forced into sex with David, and that she also got into bad relationships with like gang or mafia or mobs or something. This video can actually be found on YouTube, his suicide video.
I hate to say it, but she's probably better off with the gangs and the mob than this cult.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's a disturbing and kind of sad video if anyone decides to find it and watch it.
I've seen it, or I've seen chunks of it back in the day.
Yeah. Clearly, it messed up his mind as it would. I mean, how could it not?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel really bad for him. Karen, it's unknown where she's at, but as I said, it's known that she is still the leader of the Family International, formerly known as the Children of God.
Mm-hmm.
According to the familyinternational.org, there are over 1,400 members in about 80 countries. I don't know how long it's been since that was updated, so I don't know if that's accurate, but that's what it said. I looked it up.
Isn't what Manson called his the family too?
I think so.
That's probably where I heard it before. Took me
just
all
have nothing to do
that.
with anything that says the family. Like you go to a job and they say, we're like a family here. You walk the fuck out. Walk out.
Sometimes I've worked with places that seem very friendly like that and didn't treat you crappy, but a lot of times it's just weird. Try not to get in a cult.
Yeah. Especially one this way. It's
Don't.
And there's more to this. Like I said, you need to go online on this particular website, I believe. But anyway, it's one of the first websites that pops up for any of these people you look at, any of these names.
They still want you to join.
It's not, I don't know. It's just, and then there's the crazy man, David, speaking. Like you can hear some of his audio as well.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
And
just a mumble unto himself.
Yeah. And there's so much. That's not even half. Because I spent 2 days on this and I didn't even go through all of it because, as I mentioned before, some of it just sounds like you're such a nutcase. I don't even know how to understand what the hell he's saying.
Yeah, when he's mumbling like that, that's what made me think. Like, you had to be high to just cool, groovy. Just keep mumbling at me.
In reality, everything in this is not cool and groovy.
Yeah.
It is far from.
Don't get bamboozled by a cult.
Yeah. Don't sign anything.
Don't sign your property over to anybody who asks you to do it either.
Read if you do have to sign something.
Oh, they know. That's the thing. They know. They've been bamboozled by a cult. They know what's happening. Yeah, don't fall for none of this. This is a very long episode considering, but it was worth it. And just don't fall for cultish behavior. Use your common sense.
Walk away.
I've watched a series that mentions that there's a very short period of time when you get in, everything seems normal. And then when things start to go weird, there's a very short period of time where you know that something's not normal. That's the best time to get out. The only time that you can get out before you just decide to commit.
Also, from what I understand or what I've heard, cults usually don't give you a lot of information up front. It'll be very vague descriptions of things.
Sounds like a cure-all, promising all these issues could be solved by following them and all that. And then they start getting like, what's it going to cost you to get there after you've been there long enough to get invested?
Yeah. I'm
not an expert on cultish behavior. Don't do it. Use your common sense. That's all we can say. We're not experts on this, but you could hear it. It just goes out of hand.
Is so strange to me because only
Seems
one
like common
person,
sense.
because of Ricky, only one person got punished in a way, I guess you would say, because he stabbed her to death. The main leaders, he managed to get away and live out his life, didn't get caught, didn't get any punishment for this. Karen's still out there somewhere, not getting punished for any of this.
The thing
Why
is,
are these people not getting punished?
They might very well be in countries now that the age restrictions aren't there, so they can't punish the person spewing it.
I don't know.
That might be another reason for the moving around a lot. Because some countries, their age limits are just way down, uncomfortably so, or not there at all. I'm not an expert. I don't know. I'm just saying I might have heard that in the documentary I've seen. I don't remember. We'll have more of these in the future. Thanks for taking the time to go through it all, Beth. I can't absorb most of it because I just can't take it seriously. Like I said, I'm not watching the screen. My eyes are stuck in the back of my head where I roll them so much. Oh, I do not do this in person that much. So if we ever meet any of you, don't expect me to just constantly be rolling my eyes at you. I'm terribly awkward. I don't look people in the eye that often, so I'll be looking down or around, not rolling my eyes at you.
I don't know. If you start preaching some craziness like that, then I'm probably going to roll my eyes, obviously, right at you.
Yeah. That might be the case. I'll get wide-eyed at first. I'm like,
and then I'm
going to
walk away.
One.
I'm not going to say a word, and I'm just going to walk away because.
Okay. Well, if you like what you heard here, we have other podcasts out. We're part of the Gruesome Gaming Group Podcast Network, and we have Brother Knows Quest. It's a podcast where I tell Beth here about a different tabletop role-playing game like D&D or something else each week. And then we have Leveling Duo. It's a podcast that comes out sporadically whenever we get a new game, a video game we really like to talk about. Me and Beth here, and me and my friend Dakota will talk about that in that episode. And the link, there'll be a few links in the description below. The first one you see will be a link tree link, and will take you to a whole bunch of other stuff. Like, the first one on the link tree link will be our website, Gruesome Gaming Group, and it will take you to all of our podcasts. You can find them there. Hear samples of them or subscribe. Then inside the other link tree links, there'll be our socials, anything you want to reach out to us or just follow us and see what we're up to, YouTube channel links, all that will be there. And then below the link tree link itself will be a couple of emails, one for Gruesome Gaming Group and one for Horrific History and Hauntings. You could reach out to either one of them. If you want to reach out to me, do the Gruesome Gaming Group one. You could reach out to the Horrific History and Haunting one if you want to talk to Beth. That one makes more sense for this podcast because she does the podcast. I just listen. And then below that will be an option to send us a tip or a donation. We appreciate it if you do. It helps keeps the podcast going. I think that will be it. Send us your reviews. Once we get enough, we'll have a whole episode where we discuss the stuff people have said and read out the reviews. If you don't want us to read yours, let us know or put a name or a hint, something in there. But we do appreciate the reviews. Also, like I said, feel free to reach out from us. We'd like to hear from you. Give us ideas of what we should cover next or just say hi. Any of it. Well, thank you again. I've been Ramey.
And I'm Beth.
This has been HH&H. Bye-bye.